Hello everyone, this is part 38 of What If Naruto was in the 7 Ninja Swordsman, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Bring it on, father. Naruto looked at the Senju brothers standing before him in all the glory. Behind them stood their large allied army, now having gotten to a safe distance away from the upcoming fight, knowing the power these three cages were capable of unleashing. It was exactly like what he had seen in the memories the sage had shown him. With the wounds and exertion suffered by his body, it was impossible for him to truly defeat the two men in front of him. And yet he still had to stop them. Looking at his father, Tobirama made his heart clench again. Knowing as long as the man lived, Naruto's own comrades and their victory would never be assured. But could he truly bring himself to kill his own parent? His uncle Hashirama was already but Tobirama was alive. However, the Hokage looked determined to kill him to save his cause and the men who followed him. Naruto was left with no choice but to do what was best for his own comrades, adding another regret to his rather long line. He charged towards them, already performing a set of hand signs to call forth the forbidden power, the only one left in his arsenal that could stop the Senju brothers permanently. It was taught to him by the Azukage himself as the leader of the Spartans upon the completion of his training, to be used against the most powerful tailed beast when all was lost. He had never imagined he would be forced to use it upon his own family. Hashirama tried to stop him by first raising dozens of vines from the ground to stop his charge, and when that failed, the first Hokage sent a hail of wooden projectiles from his hands to skewer his nephew. To his surprise, Naruto evaded most with his Harasshan but didn't resist when a few through sheer numbers did strike across multiple vital points. Tobirama was upon him next with his holy sword Raijin no Ken. The second Hokage sent the lightning sword straight towards his son's heart with the intention of forcing him to stop whatever jutsu he was creating. He watched in horror when Naruto still didn't stop and allowed the sword to pierce his heart as the doomed cage finished the final hand sign. Hashirama gasped in shock when a clone of Naruto appeared in front of him instantly and grabbed him in an unbreakable grip laced with Fuinjutsu seals that preventing further movement. Glancing ahead, he saw a similar action had been taken against Tobirama, even if the second Hokage had his own son clean through the heart. Summoning Jutsu, Reaper Death Seal. The Senju brothers felt the very air around them becoming cold and haunting as they paled upon witnessing the arrival of an Oni that terrified their own hearts. For it was God of Death himself. The Shinigami stood before them in all its monstrous power, staring down upon them in judgment. It had a humanoid but demonic visage larger than any man, with long shaggy white hair from which two red horns were emerging. Its ghastly body was covered in a white kimono, but they still saw faint purple-colored skin of the ancient being in some places. In one hand it held a savage-looking tanto while the other held prayer beads of some kind. Its mouth was full of long and sharp teeth and a very disturbing long serpentine-like tongue. Hashirama and Tobirama paled further when they saw the monster was already having a soul hanging in front of it like an offering. With growing horror, they realized it was Naruto's. The brothers used all their might to break free, knowing they were in danger, but the Fuinjutsu that Naruto and his clone had tainted them with made them stay just where they were. I'm truly sorry, father, uncle. The next moment the Shinigami pierced the spectral visage of Naruto's soul hanging before him and sent two hands that then pierced through Naruto's real body to first grab Tobirama's and then Naruto's clone to reach Hashirama's own. Tobirama saw the resolve in his son's eyes along with deep regret as he looked at him tearfully. The second Hokage felt the cold hand of death itself gripping his very soul as it was slowly started to be wrenched from his body. Looking back, he saw the same thing was being done to Hashirama. This is the end, isn't it, son? Asked Tobirama in a resigned voice, for no matter how hard he tried, the power of the Shinigami made all his efforts fail to save himself. Yes, for all three of us. We will be sealed in the Reaper's belly to fight an eternal battle against each other, never passing to the Pure Lands. Our souls will never get peace after death, for we are doomed forever, confessed Naruto sadly. Tobirama sighed and Naruto waited for another string of curses, only for his father to look at him with pride and sadness in his eyes. I fought and I lost against my own son. There is no shame in that, whispered Tobirama truthfully. I didn't want to do this, but if you or Hashirama still lived, there was no hope for my comrades, replied Naruto hesitantly. Tobirama nodded at the truth and hidden praise even as he saw his soul now nearly halfway outside his body. You would have never managed to beat us in your current state. So you called forth the one power no man can ever defeat, death itself. But the cost, nephew, whispered Hashirama sadly, as the end came near. The price of my sins, uncle. And the S for a better future, replied Naruto's clone without hesitation this time. Then you truly are worthy of being called Naruto the Great, nephew. For some reason, Tobirama was content even if it was ending this way. He had tried his best to fight for what he believed in and used every means to win. His son had been the same, only he was prepared to go beyond any man had ever imagined. I understand if you hate me for this, father, said Naruto sincerely. Tobirama looked at the death god stealing his soul quite eagerly and licking its lips quite savagely before he glanced back at his young son. I could never truly stand with you in life, but in death we shall be together. I could live with that. Naruto sagged in relief upon hearing those words even as pain screamed fiercely from all the wounds he had taken, especially the one to the heart and the cold power of the Shinigami flowing through his own body and soul. I hope this future so many fought and for is better than what we have today, prayed Tobirama. It will, promised Naruto. Then go on, do your duty. Tobirama's last words brought forth the final moment as he watched the Shinigami extracting Hashirama's soul first and sealing it inside Naruto's clone before consuming away the combined souls into its belly, making the clone vanish in a puff of smoke, and Hashirama's Edo Tensei form to crumble much to angry roars of the allied forces in the rear. Goodbye, father. You won't be alone long, whispered Naruto sadly. The last thing Tobirama saw was the sight of his soul being extracted completely and about to follow the same process as his brother when everything went dark for him. Naruto staggered in pain and shock as his father's soul was sealed inside his body as the fallen Hokage's sea tumbled lifelessly and was caught by his own son respectfully and laid upon the ground tenderly. The god of death was now slowly but surely consuming Naruto's own soul as payment for using his power. He watched the enraged allied army charge at him upon witnessing the fall of their last cage in vengeance, making him grab Muramasa for one last time along with his father's own holy sword after he slowly removed it from his sea. In his final moments, he would take as many of them as possible to the afterlife. As he charged one last time to meet his enemies, Naruto heard a distant voice in his mind, one he never thought he would hear ever again. Naruto, it's me. I am communicating to you through my long-range mind transfer technique. I have 1,000 Zetsu with me and are almost near Tiger Hill. What's your situation? Asked Inos frantically. He could feel his body getting cold and senses dulling further as the death god claimed its prize quicker even as Naruto continued to those foolish enough to attack him. Don't come here. It's too late, he replied back to her sadly, even as two more swords were into his sea before he struck down his attackers in retaliation. Calling forth the last of his strength and the destructive swords in his hand, Naruto vaporized a large swath of allied fighters, making the rest blanch in horror and gain safe distance from the cage. He fell to his knees in exhaustion and pain as everything started to fade away except for Ino's desperate and frantic voice in his mind. No, Naruto, get up, and run away. Please. His heart broke as heard her cry and beg for him to run away, but he didn't have the strength left to even stand up on his feet as he distantly heard a pair of footsteps approaching towards him. Ino, I'm sorry, he whispered with the last of his strength. Get up and fight. I am coming, just hang in there. She promised madly. The death god had almost claimed his soul and he looked up to see a wounded Danzo Shimura looking down at him with a sword in hand. For Lord Tobirama. The next moment everything went dark. Half an hour later, Ino emerged out of the Zetsu's shell that had carried her all this way. It had taken longer than expected and she barely had 1,000 Zetsu with her, but she was determined to help in any way she can. They had taken up position barely a few hundred meters away from the enemy camp where she had felt thousands upon thousands of chakra signatures. Most probably the allied forces. She was terrorized with fear and worry after Naruto stopped responding. His voice had already sounded close to but she refused to accept any of that. They have taken Tiger Hill. She refused to believe those treacherous words from a crestfallen Zetsu beside her, But the thunderous cheering from the Allied army was not something she could deny no matter how much she wanted. "You stay here, I'll go investigate," she commanded. Before her men could respond, she had already focused her attention by closing her eyes to launch her long-range mind transfer technique upon the closest enemy Kunoiki. Less than a few moments later, she found herself in the midst of a thunderous and cheering Allied army. Looking around, she rapidly started to march forward towards the slopes of Tiger Hill where she could find more information of how grave the situation truly was. It was hard to continue projecting cheerfulness upon her current host's face to blend in with the masses, but she managed enough emotion that nobody stopped or questioned her. A few Awagakure shinobi called her towards their ranks since her host was from that nation, but she blended in the crowd to disappear. It became clear to her with every passing moment that the Allies had won this battle. However, along with cheering there was also anger, with many sullen faces whispering they had taken massive losses, including many of their own leaders. That only gave her the barest satisfaction. Her attention then focused upon the peaks of Tiger Hill and heard many more cheers as the numerous once proud flags of the Terran Federation burned before her eyes. Upon the hill, there were thousands of Setsusi, but no Spartans or of their leader. Further cheering erupted inside the Allied army and shinobi parted ranks to allow a small procession from a distance to march forward. "Can't believe the bastard is finally said a Konoha Junin near her in disbelief. "Serves him right. He butchered thousands of our allied ranks including Lord Tsuchikage and destroying your own cages," reminded an Awagakure Chunin bitterly. Dread pulled deep inside Ino's heart when she saw a wounded Tsukumo Hitaki standing at a distance with disgust and disbelief clearly evident upon his pale face. "Here comes Naruto the Great," cried a chorus of mocking voices. Ino looked ahead only to tremble in grief and blind hatred as a group of allied shinobi mostly from Awagakure and Konoha carried forward 2B upon their shoulders. The first form carried forward by the allies was the sea of an adult Spartan officer who had the head of a massive wolf skulled barbarically with ninja wire upon his decapitated sea. Behind him a group of Konoha shinobi led by Danzo Shimura were parading a massive wolf body with a human head skulled to it similarly. And one Ino knew intimately. "No, my warriors give a cheer for the young wolf," said Danzo victoriously. The allied army roared like never before, with hundreds imitating wolf howling quite crudely to mock the fallen warrior and his loyal wolf battle partner, but all Ino saw was the sea of the man she loved in the vilest ways she had ever seen. Tears slipped from her eyes as she saw Naruto's lifeless eyes staring blankly, as his head now crudely skulled upon his wolf's body with ninja wire was paraded across the entire allied army to thunderous cheering and insults. She could feel nothing but hatred in her heart for what these people had done, thousands of her own countrymen. Her horrified gaze lay fixated upon Naruto's head even as Tsukumo Hitaki and a dozen men and women had enough and walked towards Danzo and his group with anger in their eyes. She felt herself walking towards them automatically, regardless of the danger to exposing her presence. Konoha's white fang didn't pause when Danzo blinked in surprise and reeled in pain as a tight S from the older man sent him crashing to the ground. "What madness is this? You are shinobi, not animals," roared Tsukumo furiously. "He was our enemy but no longer, the S do not deserve this," backed Shisui Uchiha coldly. "He butchered my countrymen. Have you forgotten what was done to our village?" roared many of the Awagakure survivors in disgust and defiance. "That was Madara, not this man," protested Tsukumo. "Thousands of our countrymen and all our cages because of him on this battlefield." "This is justice," said Danzo coldly. "That was war and you killed him alongside thousands of his comrades." "He's Lord Tobarama's son," said Ino fiercely, fighting back the tears and heartbreak that was tearing her apart with every passing moment. "Danzo, all of you, the armies of Kirigakure and Azushiogakure will never forget this," warned Tsukumo gravely. "Good. Let them remember what happens to those that oppose us and threaten the peace of this world. Maybe we should send the young wolf back to them like this so they learn their lesson and end their rebellion," refuted Danzo coldly. He frowned when some nameless Awagakure Kunoiki who was surprisingly opposing this justice walked towards him with M in her eyes. Before he could understand what she was doing, the woman swiftly unleashed a kunai and him in the T and it with such vengeance that a permanent horrified expression was etched upon his face as he passed into the afterlife. Dozens grabbed the host's body that Ino was occupying in shock and rage, but before they could butcher her as well, it was Tsukumo Hitaki who ordered them to stop and approached her. Who are you? Asked Tsukumo warily. The first wife of the man you butchered tonight, the love of my life. And the woman who burned down your feudal capital and its daimyo alongside all remaining daimyos across the world, said Ino with vengeance burning in her voice. The allied shinobi reeled back in shock and disbelief, but Tsukumo was the only who paled in horror as he realized who this person truly was. Ino, you were supposed to be whispered Tsukumo in fear and disbelief, only to receive a glare from the Awagakure Kunoiki whom the Yamanaka clan fighter was using. Tears fell from the woman's eyes and in them Tsukumo saw nothing but pain and a fearsome rage as she glared at the allied forces. We will remember this. I will use every fighter, every weapon I have down to my own hands to end you. You all shall screaming. I swear it, we are coming for all of you. The next moment all hell broke loose. Few minutes earlier. The young wolf, not so great now, is he? Rot in the deepest hells, butcher. Forever young. Zabuza and Kisame alongside the aerial units from Kirigakure paled in horror upon what they were witnessing. The veterans from Kiri saw the way the allies had the beloved cages see and the mocking of the enemy army. You bastards, said Zabuza. They had taken up positions at a nearby hill just moments before, sent ahead of the combined ground forces not a few hours away and were ready to come to their cage's defense only to now realize that it was too late. They had failed. As Zabuza was about to order a attack, it was Kisame who grabbed him firmly and looked at the rest of their fighters burning with black rage and the thirst for revenge. Don't do anything rash, he ordered reluctantly. Zabuza smacked his fellow swordsmen for the first time and along with unending rage there were tears in the man's eyes making many of their own men tear up. I'll kill them all, swore Zabuza defiantly, and unleashed his sword but was again grabbed by Kisame. Before he could push his comrade away, he froze upon seeing tears and grief in Kisame's own eyes. We will only get K if we attack with the few men we have. Naruto wouldn't want that, no matter what, cautioned Kisame sadly. Have you forgotten what they did to our cage and friend? Look at them, hissed Zabuza bitterly, forcing the other 7 ninja swordsmen to watch the barbaric and disrespectful manner in which the enemy was parading Naruto and his wolf's sea across the battlefield. At the very least, let us recover his body. We owe Lord Forth that, urged Ganru miserably. Kisame looked at their cage and dear friend C being paraded by the enemy like a trophy. Shame and rage were too small an emotion as to what he felt in this moment. It was then he saw a strange commotion happening across the allied ranks as a small group of their own fiercely argued with the ones disrespecting Naruto C. Kisame's eyes widened when one of the woman's Danzo's tea moments later with such viciousness that took everyone by shock. We will remember this. I will use every fighter, every weapon I have down to my own hands to end you. You all shall screaming. I swear it, we are coming for all of you. The woman's anguished and vengeful roar echoed across Tiger Hill stirring the hearts of the veterans from Kirigakure. They watched in disbelief as hundreds of Zetsu emerged amidst the allied ranks without a care for their own lives. A merciless ensued as the attackers tore through the surprised allies with cruel savagery as the lone Awagakure Kunoiki charged fearlessly towards Naruto C. Kisame didn't know why an enemy from Awagakure was doing this, but he clearly saw her intentions and it helped harden his own resolve. You're right, Ganru. We failed our cage in his most desperate hour. But we will bring him home. Charge! 1,000 veterans of Kirigakure roared in vengeance upon that fateful command as they all took to the skies with their winged devices and kunai launchers. Leading them were the 2 most powerful swordsmen of the mist, with both Kisame and Zabuza only having absolute hatred burning in their eyes upon the massive enemy army before them. Any sane commander including their fallen cage would call such an action to be an act of madness. Some part of the Kirigakure veterans knew it to be so, and still their vengeful hearts screamed to make their enemies pay for the disgusting actions. Their fury was unmatched as all 1,000 of them unleashed a devastating rain of explosives mercilessly. The allied army had not been able to get over the fighting that had erupted in their own ranks, and were caught completely by surprise by the Kirigakure attack. Hundreds of their ranks were torn to pieces and thousands more sent flying in the shockwaves created by the rain of explosions. The Kirigakure aerial forces were not satisfied with blowing their enemies from the skies, their rage screaming for more carnage and death as they descended downwards in all their fury. Hundreds of allies lost their heads as the shinobi of Kiri carried out their flyby near the ground, heading straight for the group of Awagakure and Konoha shinobi desperately trying to ferry away Naruto and his wolf C. The only one to match their cry for vengeance and black rage was the lone Iwagakure Kunoichi, who had started this mad attack as she too carved her way through to the once still holding Naruto's sea, hundreds of Zetsu supporting her fearless advance. It made one thing clear for the Kiri shinobi that whoever this woman was, she was an ally of their fallen Kage if the Zetsus were fighting so desperately to keep her safe even at the cost of their own lives. But it didn't have to go on for long, as both Zabuza and Kisame landed with 1,000 of their special forces by the Zetsu's side. Tsukumo Hatake watched in horror as chaos and death raged all around him. All of this carnage for the sake of AC. But some part of his heart felt it to be justified after the disgusting actions of his own comrades. He could not forget their unforgivable actions in Naruto's sea after the brave Kage was truly a man who his life to save his comrades. As he watched the small force of Zetsus and the newly arrived Kirigakure forces fight with terrifying vengeance, Tsukumo didn't miss the tears in many of those warriors' eyes as they all fought madly to reach their cages, any with brutality that dared to get in their way. Many of them fell when the allies finally got over their shock and started using their superior numbers. Yet not a single one of Naruto's allies faltered even as they went down fighting. He watched the Iwagakure Kunoichi, whose body Ino was posseing Getes multiple times, and yet she kept moving forward to finally reach Naruto's sea, joined by Kisame and Zabuza. The Zetsu and Kirigakure forces now created an unbreakable defensive position around them, not giving an inch to the allies, with the Kirigakure shinobi K-hundreds with their kunai launchers. More and more tried to overwhelm them, only to fall at the hands of the enraged and vicious defenders of the mist. Zabuza and Kisame exchanged words with Ino and seemed to reel back in shock upon her reply before understanding dawned in their eyes as they nodded at her respectfully. Together, the two veterans gently removed Naruto's head from his wolf's sea, with Zabuza also going forward next to gather the fallen wolf's remains as well. Tsukumo watched Ino tremble in uncontrollable tears and grief as she took Naruto's head in her hands. The rage and vengeance that had carried her so far then shattered as she fell to her knees and wept. The sight of it broke Tsukumo's heart completely. His tired gaze glancing at the battle raging across the battlefield as men and women fought to butcher each other for different reasons. The fear among their hearts, the screams of the and wounded, the sound of weapons being unleashed in true fury. The same mistakes over and over again, an endless cycle. Tsukumo could not help but agree with Naruto's dislike for such senseless violence. Had the fallen Mizukage fought for the right cause all along? Historians would probably write that Naruto bravely and nobly on the battlefield like a true shinobi must, but watching the carnage all around him. Tsukumo finally understood the futility of this war as thousands fought before his very eyes for the sake of AC. The only solace being that it belonged to a good man in Tsukumo's eyes. Wars had been fought for much pettier things since eons by mankind. Naruto is gone, but his family and followers are not. They will avenge him no matter the cost. The White Fang realized exactly the cycle that Naruto had wished to break, the freedom to live in a world not infested by never-ending wars and revenge. Naruto Namikaze was a veteran of 3 great wars, just like Tsukumo. Had seen enough death and misery to scar anyone's heart. This battle had marked the end of the line of cages across the world, with Naruto being the last recognized one of the important order to fall. The rule of the daimyos had also came to an inglorious end if what Ino said had been true, and for some reason Tsukumo doubted she was lying. There was a time when what Tsukumo started doing would never cross his mind, in fact he would be doing the exact opposite. But even veterans could only take so much destruction and pain before something in them broke completely. It had happened with Naruto and led the man down his path. Just as it led to Tsukumo following his own, using the chaos across the battlefield as the allies tried to chase the retreating supporters of Naruto who had managed to recover the fallen Kage and his wolf's sea, the White Fang walked away from the battlefield in silence. He had enough of wars and wanted nothing more than to be with his wife and young son Kakashi. Something Naruto must have dearly wished for his own children but would never get to see. Looking back, he saw several dozen shinobi had decided to follow him in abandoning this war. Most from Konoha, being led by Shisui Uchiha, who had backed him in opposing what Danzo and the Iwagakure survivors had done to Naruto's sea. With so many from the Uchiha clan and even a few Senju deciding to abandon this war following Tsukumo's lead, the death of their Hokages, and the vengeful promise they had all seen being made reality by Ino and her Zetsu along with the Kirigakure forces made one thing absolutely clear. Tsukumo looked at his small group of followers tiredly. Let's go home to our families. This war is lost. God has abandoned us, confessed the White Fang in shame, guilt easily visible in his tearful gaze for all the horrible things they had done and also gotten inflicted upon them in the name of justice. Perhaps it was pointless from the beginning, whispered Shisui Uchiha in agreement, as he saw the sheer amount of Essen wounded across the entire battlefield from all sides. I am old and tired. All our heroes are S now. If the end is coming for us, then I would like to face it after I see my family one last time. Follow me if you have the same wish, for this war has made monsters of us all, declared Tsukumo with deep regret in his voice. Not a single one of their small group objected as they quickly walked away from the battlefield to return back to their village. While there was still time, for Tsukumo knew deep down that a wave of vengeance was going to come crashing down upon every one of them after what their comrades had done in the name of justice. Danzo, Hiruzen, you wretched fools. May you rot in the deepest hell, for your actions have doomed us all and thousands of good men and women. Madara looked at the somber Zetsu in front of him as the creature finished his report of what transpired on Tiger Hill after the Spartans and the remaining Zetsu survivors were ordered to retreat. Only a fraction of their original army had returned back to their hideout to rejoin the last 30,000 Zetsu left in reserve for exactly such an outcome. The Uchiha leader had revived those Spartans who had fallen and healed the injured Zetsu with the help of his Rinnegan, just as he had promised Naruto. They butchered my comrade, whispered Madara, black rage evident in his frightening intent making the Zetsu tremble, but earned nothing but cold silence from the Spartan leaders nearby. Especially Kushina Uzumaki, who looked ready to butcher the enemies who not only but the body of the man she loved. They couldn't face Naruto like men, so the bastards his C to make themselves feel victorious, spat Kushina furiously. Even in death, Naruto destroyed their last and most powerful leaders. While the allies still have 50,000 fighters, they lack anyone who can stand up to your power, Lord Madara. Lord Naruto saw to that when he destroyed all their cages including the Senju brothers, reported the Zetsu. God bless his soul. The Spartan officers were surprised to hear that sincere prayer from the Uchiha leader, but one look at him showed them that the man truly loved Naruto like the son he wished for but never had. The sealing of the tailed beasts is complete. We even revived the Jinchuriki except Yagura, who wanted to just as we promised Lord Naruto so they could be returned back to their nations. Naruto's gave us the chance to finish this, it now by using this power. The vow renouncing war can end this conflict before more lives are needlessly lost. It's what Naruto wanted, reminded Black Zetsu, who had overseen the entire sealing operation. Nagato, Hayate, Kasumi and Kushina were about to protest angrily when Madara raised his hand making them stop before the Uchiha then turned towards Black Zetsu. Don't remind me of what Naruto wanted. I know it better than any of you, for he told me. It's true, I can end this now. But I won't, promised Madara coldly. Lord Madara. Madara Uchiha got up from his seat and looked directly at Nagato Uzumaki, who had the same drive inside his eyes after hearing what was done to his brothers. Prepare for battle, deploy all remaining forces, for the allies are rushing here with all haste before the combined might of Kirigakure and Azuchiogakure fall upon them from behind, ordered Madara. It will be done, and then we kill them all, demanded Nagato mercilessly, earning nods from the remaining 3 Spartans in the room. No. We will butcher every last one of them. There will be no mercy for any one of them even if they try to surrender. Not after what they did to Naruto. But it's too merciful still. Naruto was like a son to me, the only comrade who truly understood me and stood by my side against the entire world. I can't ever forgive or forget what was done to him by these heroes, who call us monsters. They called us darkness, so I will show what a true monster is, unlike the kind-hearted man they butchered on Tiger Hill, promised Madara, vengeance burning in his Rinnegan eyes. Nagato felt a cold shiver grip his heart upon those words, and Madara's decision next proved his misgivings. We will end their armies, conquer their homelands and destroy all the hidden villages they hold so dear along with everyone in it till they are nothing but distant memory. They will all screaming, said Madara furiously. No. Madara blinked in surprise upon hearing that stern command as Nagato stepped forward towards him, making the rest of the 3 Spartan officers follow his lead. Have you forgotten what they did to your brother, boy? Asked Madara furiously, earning a scathing glare in return. He was my brother, my family. Don't ever presume to misunderstand our love for him, but my brother understood mercy, and honor, reminded Nagato bravely, making Madara soften a little and give him a gentle smile. You are as stubborn as your brother and honorable, grunted Madara. I can imagine no higher praise, accepted Nagato without a flinch. Honor got your brother boy. The young wolf was the best of us, and they butchered him. I will not let that go unpunished, swore Madara stubbornly, curiously referencing to the survivors of Tiger Hill so fanatically referred to their fallen commander by now. Neither will we, Lord Madara. But my brother wished for a world free of war and revenge, he asked for it. We will kill their soldiers but not civilians and innocent children. A Wagakur was an exception which we didn't know about. I will not allow it to become the norm of this federation. We have fought, bled and Esfa, warned Nagato coldly. We will not allow you to destroy the remaining hidden villages and its citizens in the name of senseless revenge, promised Kushina fiercely. They butchered. We are soldiers, not animals unlike the allied madmen. Naruto would never forgive us if we unleashed a river full of innocence in his name. He regretted similar actions of his own in the past and asked to atone for that by creating a better world. You will not dishonor his memory and wishes, Madara Uchiha, warned Nagato icily. Madara was stunned as he looked upon the Spartans and their unflinching resolve even after all they had suffered. They were no match for him and he doubted they could stop him if he went ahead with his vengeance. There was practically no one left who could match his power now. Naruto saw to that. His heart broke as he remembered that young and gallant commander who willingly marched to his death for Madara's dream. He had known he would never see the boy he respected and loved ever again, but was horrified upon learning the manner of his death and the end of his sea afterwards by their enemy. Madara wanted their enemies to feel the pain they had caused him. But a part of his heart knew that Naruto would never approve the of innocence afterwards. You honorable fool. The Spartans watched in surprise as Madara collapsed into his seat in frustration and clenched his fist tightly. Naruto made me the leader of this federation that we wanted to build. I wish I can bring him back, but even I can't steal a soul back from the god of death himself, confessed Madara sadly. Kushina teared up as she heard that harsh truth, the smallest of hope within her heart, but she still remained standing for a time of sorrow would come later. Now she had to revenge Naruto or trying. That was all she had left. He was the son I never had. I would have named him my heir to lead this better world that we were fighting for once I am and gone from this world. But now, as Madara wallowed in his regrets, he felt a firm hand being placed upon his shoulder and looking up he saw Nagato Uzumaki giving him an understanding nod. My brother knew your feelings, Lord Madara. He is gone, but his dream is not. He believed you could finish what you both started, and we will support you in reaching that dream, but not upon the sea of innocence and burned villages, assured Nagato, strong but respectful in his declaration. For Naruto, echoed Kushina tearfully. For Naruto, agreed Hayate and Kasumi Uzumaki loyally. Madara held back his regrets and sorrow as he stood back upon his feet and looked at the Spartans with determination. For Naruto, he agreed with a solemn nod. Inoue Namikaze found herself at the head of a formidable army as it charged towards the battlefield with all haste without pause. Looking back, she saw the Uzumaki shinobi were devoted towards their duty and held great affection for the Spartans whom they felt they had failed in the past. But it was the Kirigakure forces that stunned her. They loved her son more than his own countrymen ever had. It showed in every single one of their shinobi as they had fought with maddening courage and devotion in their last battle, and even now as they charged valiantly to meet an even larger and stronger army for the beloved Kage. She never thought shinobi could ever be loyal to this degree. Her disbelief must have been easy to witness as she saw Mangetsu Hozuki charging by her side give an understanding nod. Why do you love my son so much? To go so far for him? She couldn't help but ask. Because he is the finest man we have ever known. In our darkest hour, in all our struggles, against all our enemies, Lord Naruto offered them his sea and us his back. He is the Kage we chose for ourselves. In this cruel world, there are not many good men. Your son is one of them, answered Mangetsu proudly. This world is most cruel to such men, whispered Inoue, sadness enveloping her heart for all her eldest had endured. At times it made her wonder how he had survived, the last Namikaze alone in the world for a long time. It was a terrible fate which she had wanted to spare him from. It is, but it never stopped him from doing what was right. He is not without his shortcomings as the rest of us, but we owe everything we have today to your son. When he led us in countless battles over the years, men asked for him because they believed in him, they loved him. He was there for me in my darkest hour after I lost my father, he saved me from my own demons, even saved my life on quite a few occasions. He is the man I want to be someday, many in our army do, explained Mangetsu sincerely. Inoue fought back her tears of pride after hearing those heartfelt words, and she saw Mangetsu meant every word of it. The actions of the Kirigakure army lent more credence than anything else to those beliefs. Naruto the Great. Was that legend loved by so many the same laughing child she had once seen learning to ride upon the sea waves of a zoo? Inoue loved both her sons with everything in her heart, they were her pride and joy. More precious to her than even the two men who had given her the priceless gift of motherhood. Nagato was an Uzumaki truly, a carbon copy of Yahiko his father, with his love and loyalty towards his comrades, family and nation. But her eldest, Naruto, at times Inoue had to remind herself that she had named him Minato. For a time he lived with that gentle name she had given him, but that was not his destiny. Even as a child, he was more special than his younger brother, as much as it pained her to admit as their mother. Her firstborn was destined for glory and greatness, but even in her wildest dreams, Inoue had never imagined him to achieve so much. A hero to his comrades, a magnificent sage who conquered nations, a military commander who never lost a battle. But also a man who suffered more than most. If she was given even a single fleeting chance, she would want him to go back in time and be the laughing child who loved surfing on sea waves. My son, I wish I could have given you peace and happiness. I failed as your mother, but once this is over, we can all be the family we were meant to be. It was what drove her forward and would not make her hesitate in Tobarama, the man she loved once, if he continued standing in the way of that dream. They continued charging forward for another few minutes before Mangetsu called for a sudden halt. Inoue was surprised when she spotted the aerial forces from Kirigakure they had sent to assist Naruto appear on the horizon, along with a modest group of Zetsus on the ground marching towards them solemnly. She spotted a beautiful blonde at the head of this group, and Inoue had a feeling as to whom she could be. Yet she couldn't help but feel fear within her heart as the group came near them. Ino Namikaze stopped in her tracks when she spotted the impressive army from Kirigakure and Azuchiogakure on the horizon. In the front, she saw members of the 7 ninja swordsmen along with an old Uzumaki man, probably the first Azuchage who had caused her Naruto so much pain. Yet her breath hitched in her tea as she spotted a fellow blonde in the lead, one who looked so much like Naruto. Or it was he who had inherited her beauty. The grief and heartbreak still threatened to overwhelm her, but the desire for vengeance kept her going for now. Knowing they would be meeting Naruto's mother and all those who loved him had made her alongside Zabuza and Kisame put Naruto's back together as best they could. The same courtesy was extended to his loyal wolf who fought by its master's side till death. Ino would never allow these sea of men and women so devoted to her husband to ever see the ghastly state the allies had rendered him in. But she could also not save them from the agony and heartbreak she felt deep within her heart as they finally caught sight of Naruto's being carried upon a makeshift stretcher held by Zabuza, Kisame, Ganru and a lone Zetsu in solemn silence. I've won every battle, but I'm losing this war. Naruto's prophetic words during their last meeting haunted her heart. Looking back, she realized her husband had a very good idea of what awaited him in this war against impossible odds. Most would have surrendered or fled under such circumstances. But Naruto Namikaze had fought. The armies of Kiri and Azu just stood there in horror and stunned silence, which was broken by cries of anger and grief as they saw their Cajun countrymen being carried towards them in respectful silence. Ino watched Naruto's mother alongside the first Azuchage and Mangetsu Hozuki rush forward while the remaining swordsmen kept the shocked army at bay. None of the arrivals stopped in their charge, wordlessly going past her without batting an eye, and only stopped when they reached Naruto's. She watched in sorrow as Naruto's mother looked at her son with tears in her eyes, making Ino feel her pain as she had lost a child of her own once. They had put Naruto's back together with all the skill they had, but it still couldn't hide the numerous wounds upon his body or the fateful mark of the Reaper Death Seal technique upon his Reaper Death Seal, whispered Inoue in a broken voice. Tiger Hill is lost, the allied army lost half of their forces. All their cages are Naruto saw to that, said Kisame bitterly. We were too late. I'm truly sorry, Lady Inoue, whispered Zabuza in sorrow and shame. How? It was all the anguished mother could ask as she looked upon her proud son's body. She wanted to break into 1,000 pieces in this very moment, but the rage kept her going as she imagined the ways in which she would make the men who took away her boy scream. Naruto fought valiantly. Naruto fought nobly, and he for us, said Ino Namikaze, loud enough for many to hear across the field. It was only then that many from Kirigakure recognized her and drew back in shock, for this woman was supposed to be Mangetsu was about to ask many questions but stopped when both Kisame and Zabuza shook their heads. Inoue on the other hand now was sure about this young girl's idini as she saw the intimate love and absolute grief in her eyes as she looked at the fallen Kage's sea. You loved my son. Tell me how he asked Inoue sadly. The second Azukage saw the blonde beauty give her a solemn nod before also glancing back at the rest of the army. I will show all here as to how Naruto fought for all of us, promised Ino sincerely. Having gained the memories of the Battle of Tiger Hill from the Iwagakure Kunoichi's mind she had invaded before going back to her original body during their retreat upon seizing Naruto's sea for themselves. There were so many questions in everyone's eyes, but she had promised the answer to the most important one, making an unstated agreement take place within the army. Ino walked forward to stand beside her husband's mother and offered her hand to the older woman, which was taken somberly before Inoue offered her remaining hand to Hanzo Uzumaki, the first Azukage, who then did the same for Mangetsu until one by one in a few moments a long and mighty link was formed among the entire army of both nations. The Yamanaka Kunoichi knew it was going to be hard for her to speak and relay her message to more than 50,000 warriors, all wanting answers for this atrocity, but she owed it to Naruto and the he had made. Inoue watched veins bulging from the young woman holding her hand and felt her conscience joining with her and then with Hanzo Uzumaki, an action which was then reciprocated across the entire army in a few minutes before the girl spoke to them all. My name is Ino Namikaze, once a member of the Yamanaka clan. I can show you everything through the memories I have accessed from the enemies who fought at Tiger Hill against Naruto and his men. A tale of courage, victory and for all of us to live free from the tyranny of the feudal system plaguing this world, stated Ino seriously. Thousands upon thousands of fighters were then shown memories of the Battle of Tiger Hill. They watched their fellow comrades fight heroically against an enemy 5 times their number under Naruto's leadership. For the veterans of Kirigakure, it was a bittersweet experience as they saw their Kage in action once again. His power and glory dwarfing all the enemy's strength and trickery. It made them swell with pride and regret for not being there with him in such a historic battle. His last. For the armies of Azushiogakure, it was the first time watching the full power of their Spartans against their enemies. Hanzo Uzumaki, the first Azukage, felt proud and regret similarly to his remaining clansmen for not being able to stand by such brave children of their clan for so long. But not anymore. Even the surviving Zetsu from Inoue's army at Karakan Pass or those from Ino's own ranks still alive were stunned upon seeing their fellow brothers fighting and valiantly beside the Spartans on Tiger Hill. They saw Naruto risking his own life to save many of their brothers, even taking mortal blows to save their lives. The Spartans under the young wolf's command were the same, for never once they abandoned their Zetsu comrades, many saving their lives, and never during the entire battle was any injured Zetsu left behind by the Spartans to at enemy hands. The Zetsus of Tiger Hill returned that noble loyalty in kind even if it meant death. For 3 days, their comrades had fought heroically until the end came. Even then the Terrans fought until majority of their faces achieved martyrdom in battle before returning back to the heights of Tiger Hill. Inoue Namikaze then saw her eldest son and his wolf mount a last stand against the entire allied army, while Nagato and their remaining survivors retreated back to their base to prepare for the final battle to come. The Kage in her felt admirable respect for Naruto's actions, but the mother in her was shattered as she watched her son slowly before her eyes. Shera fell first, defending his summoner to the last breath. The wolf had fulfilled his oath to her clan without hesitation, which made her sad and proud all the same. She watched Naruto, now alone and resigned while facing against the legendary Senju brothers. She, along with a few Uzumaki like Hanzo who knew about the Reaper Death Seal technique, were nonetheless left stunned upon watching Naruto use it to put an end to both Hashirama and Tobirama. Ino felt terrible as she then imparted Naruto's last moments when she had spoken to the Kage, him fighting the enraged allied army for as long as possible before he was drained of all strength and fell to his knees with numerous wounds. And the final blow from Danzo taking Naruto's head. Stunned silence prevailed across the armies of Kiri, Azu and the Terran fighters as they took in that moment, but not a single one of them was prepared to witness what came after. Inoue Namikaze had never been a vengeful person, but watching the enemy her son and his wolf see, to parade it across their cheering army as a final insult made her draw B from her clenched fists. The same B and frightening rage erupted across their entire army as they witnessed the monstrous depravity inflicted upon a man they loved and respected. Thousands fell to their knees, either in sorrow, shame or heartbreak. Ino didn't know, for she was fighting back her own tears as she relived that haunting moment. It was no surprise when nobody was shocked upon witnessing the actions launched by Ino's forces alongside ones from Kirigakure aerial units led by Kisame and Zabuza to retrieve their cages C from those wanting to insult it further. Ino felt respect and dull satisfaction from everyone in the army when they accomplished the task before marching back here. The link was closed as the memories came to an end. B leaked from Ino's eyes and nose, but as she fell to the ground weakly, it was Naruto's mother who caught her protectively. "Thank you for loving my son and ending the one who gave the final blow, and for telling us," whispered Inoue sadly, even as she gently shared healing chakra to restore Ino's strength. "I failed. I could only bring him back like this," lamented Ino. "You've done enough, child. The war is not over and my son will be avenged," promised Inoue with cold determination. The second Azuki helped her stand back upon her feet before turning towards their army, even as members of the 7 ninja swordsmen respectfully carried Naruto C to the center, making everyone reach out to pay their final respects to the beloved Kage. For the fallen. It started as a lone shout from someone in the army, then a dozen more joined in not a moment later. For the Spartans. For Zetsu. For Shara. For the heroes of Tiger Hill. Inoue Namikaze watched their entire army mourn and cheer for everyone of their own until she raised her own sword to point at the sea of her own son. For Naruto. Her cry was the most powerful, laced with pride, heartbreak and tears. For Naruto. Thousands upon thousands of fighters unleashed their weapons and matched her outcry, their rage and be enough to shake in any army. For Naruto. Ino watched with tears in her eyes as the very ground beneath her feet started to tremble with the power being unleashed by the vengeful army. Only one cry from everyone's lips echoing across the valley alongside their tears of anger, sadness and eternal respect as she joined them. For Naruto. For Naruto. For Naruto. For Naruto. As the army's roars of vengeance got even more louder and fanatical, Inoue Namikaze's furious declaration was heard by one and all even above the outcry of thousands. "Split the skies and earth with his name. Let your anger and sorrow reach our enemies as distant thunder promising fire and B. For Naruto. We will avenge our fallen. For Naruto. We will butcher every last one of those bastards. For Naruto. There will be no quarter. No mercy. Every one of them shall less screaming. For Naruto. When the sun sets tonight we shall erase the very existence of every allied fighter. For Naruto. For Naruto. For Naruto. 6 hours later. Shikuchi Nara heaved a sigh of relief as he spotted the enemy's main base where the Jinchurikis from various nations lay captured. He still didn't understand how things had gone so badly for them so quickly, just 3 days before they had the most powerful army and 3 cages leading them. Now, their cages were with their army gutted in half with so many wounded and few desertions even. Damn you, Naruto Namikaze. The young wolf was the finest commander the Nara clan head had seen in his entire service. Powerful, handsome, brilliantly charismatic and a sound strategist. In some ways even better than his own father Tobirama, whom he also defeated in battle. Even in death and his only known defeat, Naruto dealt a blow the allies would never recover from any time soon, which was a disaster in this war. Shikuchi was extremely angered and disappointed with the desertion of Tsukumo Hatake, Shisui Uchiha alongside several Uchiha and Senju clansmen among others. While not a large force to flee from the war, they were some of the last and most powerful fighters who could actually stand a chance against Madara and whatever defenders he had left. If Danzo was not he would have crucified the mad fool for his actions that led to some of their own valued men like Tsukumo deserting them and the enemy to be surely fueled by vengeance. The command of their remaining army had fallen to him, considering there were not many experienced commanders of good caliber left in their ranks. Shikuchi had considered unconditional surrender, but neither his fighters or, more importantly, the enemy would accept the same. The first were riding high upon their victory at Tiger Hill, even if only a few realized at what cost. The last would never show them any mercy, not after what was done to Naruto's sea at allied hands. Shikuchi agreed with those feelings. While he hated Naruto for almost all his clansmen who had marched to war personally, the didn't deserve such disgrace. It left him with only one option, which was to swiftly charge towards Madara's hideout, overwhelm him with their numbers and save their Jinchuriki, and hope to any god that existed they could accomplish it all before the armies of Azu and Kiri arrived roaring for B. He grimaced when some of his hopes for quick victory were extinguished when he saw thousands upon thousands of Zetsu in the way between the allies and the base. Leading the monsters were even greater ones in the form of the feared Spartans at full strength once again. Impossible, whispered Shikuchi in disbelief. But then he remembered how they were revived by Madara originally and cursed Naruto's brilliance once again. By sending all of them back alive, wounded or the young wolf had dealt the allies another critical blow even from the afterlife. Commander, we have reports from our rearguard scouts that the armies of Kiri and Azu are charging at full swing towards us. Their aerial forces will be upon us in half an hour, ground forces not long after that. They have gone mad, reported one of his subordinates worriedly. Shikuchi wanted to scream but knew it would do no good. Morale had to be maintained lest chaos reigned supreme if their troops discovered the perilous situation. Sound a full frontal charge. Every last one of our fighters is to storm through these bastards and reach the base. Ordered Shikuchi, and grabbed a sword himself to participate in the desperate action. The remaining officers were quick in carrying out his orders, even if many of their men flinched upon seeing the Spartans point their blades right at them challengingly. There would be no mercy shown by them after what was done to their leader. Within a few minutes, the allied army, some 50,000 strong, all charged madly and bravely towards the outnumbered defenders. Nagato and the remaining Spartans once again stood in the vanguard watching another massive enemy horde charge towards them. They wanted nothing more but to butcher every last one of them, but were also more inclined to follow Madara's command. It would be much sweeter. Just as planned, the Spartans and the Zetsu army showed panic at the enemy charge, and even started to retreat a little, making the enemies even more bold as instead of attacking in various organized divisions, they just charged forward, breaking all formation to catch maximum glory or reach the base quickly. While the allies had more numbers, they had no unity considering they were all from different nations who had always been at war with each other. What they didn't understand was the fact that this was not going to be a battle like they were imagining. It was going to be the most brutal one in recent or perhaps all-known history of shinobi. The Spartans glared in cold silence as the skies above darkened once more, and before the allies could understand what was happening, two meteors the size of small mountains crashed into their center with overwhelming power. The ground trembled like never before as thousands in the blink of an eye as Madara Uchiha arrived on the battlefield. Shinra Tensei. The Rinnegan bearer launched a massive shockwave, sending the entire front line of the allies crashing away like ragdolls. The allies lost all cohesion, but Madara was far from satisfied as he summoned the Gedo statue next. You butchered the boy who was like a son to me in all but name, for that I will take your very souls. Roared Madara furiously. Twin ethereal dragons were launched by the Gedo statue, which quickly started consuming the very souls of hundreds of the terrified allied army fighters. Madara stepped before his own army with his famous gunbai in one hand and a sword in another. He saw nothing but vengeance burning in the eyes of every Spartan and Zetsu as they gripped their weapons firmly. "Kill them all, every last one of them," commanded Madara. His army's thunderous roar of vengeance shook the battlefield, the mountains, the skies, and the very souls of the terrified enemies. Madara led the charge in person, just like he had seen Naruto do in every battle, the overwhelming power and the earlier declaration haunting the allied army. The sight of Madara Uchiha alongside the feared Spartans and 30,000 Zetsu charging straight towards them broke most. While hundreds brave, enraged of the allies countercharged at the approaching enemy army with Shikuchi Nara's leadership, most realized all was lost and started to retreat in all haste. Their wishes would not be granted as Madara blocked their escape by creating a powerful barrier. For the first time in years, the Uchiha felt alive as hundreds upon hundreds burned at his hands, with the Spartans and Zetsu creating their own river of B. None left in the allied ranks strong enough to match their overwhelming power. The S continued without stopping as no mercy was allowed, with Shikuchi Nara himself grabbed by Madara personally by the T. The Allied commander wheezed in pain and gave one last scream before Madara yanked the man's head from his body, savagely drenching himself in B. Watching their last capable leader BM so brutally made the rest of the allies either fight back or run for their lives. Madara didn't care as he threw the severed head and blew up more enemies with the explosives he had attached upon it. Behind him, Nagato burned hundreds alive by immolating their B with his ash release. Kushina severed the limbs of dozens of enemies with her chakra chains before yanking out the very hearts to throw at the feet of their other terrified comrades. Hayate and Kasumi lead the remaining Spartans in destroying hundreds more, even as thousands upon thousands of Zetsu stormed through the broken Allied lines, while most just K the enemies. Hundreds more savage ones who had survived at Tiger Hill and knew what was done to their beloved commander's body by these fighters returned the savagery in kind by eating their enemies alive. The Gedo statue under Madara's direction continued causing mayhem across the battlefield, preventing the enemy from mounting any credible defense. Those groups who tried were destroyed quickly. All hope vanished for the Allied army when a rain of explosives fell upon them from the skies. Looking up, they paled upon seeing the arrival of the aerial units of Kirigakure upon the battlefield. Not a few minutes later, a thunderous war horn sounded from the rear as the entire might of Azu, Kiri and remnants of Terran Federation army from Karakan Pass came seeking vengeance. More than 50,000 angered fighters ready to unleash hell. Leading them were Ino Namikaze, the second Azukage, and members of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Usually the one to take a peaceful approach, Inoue had none of that desire even as she witnessed the systematic S of the Allied army before her eyes. The memories of her son's M and the desecration of his C still fresh in her mind. Looking beside, she saw Ino, her son's first wife, had the same hatred burning in her eyes. Mangetsu and few of the other 7 ninja swordsmen were further angered upon witnessing one of the allied shinobi from Konoha wielding Naruto's infamous sword Muramasa and maintaining one of the few well-defended pockets of resistance. What these men had done to their cage was not enough, they even had to seize his sword. They'll pay for this, swore Mangetsu with vengeance, as he unleashed his sword. In fire and B, agreed Inoue Namikaze with equal fury. And broken dreams, whispered Ino coldly. With fearsome war cries, the armies of Azushiogakure and Kirigakure descended upon the allied army from the rear, completing their encirclement from both directions. With Madara's army butchering them from the front, the newly arrived reinforcements essed them from the rear, and the aerial forces raining death from the skies, the imminent defeat became a reality. In less than an hour, Mountain's Graveyard truly earned its moniker as thousands upon thousands of sea littered its lands, with most belonging to the allied army now butchered to the last fighter. Their end had not been quick or merciful, with most S in screams of fear and pain, just as Ino had promised on Tiger Hill. The young wolf was avenged. And yet for all those who loved him, even this victory was not enough to fill the hole in their hearts. Burn these hyenas and dump their ashes in the gutters, said Madara without mercy, pointing towards the sea of the allied forces now staining the ground in a sea of B. Before the nearby Zetsus could carry out the order, another firm voice made them stop. Stop, commanded Inoue Namikaze, covered in B and few wounds but looking formidable as she approached towards Madara with many Uzumaki and the 7 ninja swordsmen in tow. The Spartans led by Nagato froze in shock upon witnessing a small group from both Azu and Kiri alongside many Zetsu as well standing protectively around Naruto C. Inoue was heartbroken upon seeing her younger son tear up and rush towards his brother's C, with Kushina and all the Spartans sharing those feelings as they joined Nagato's side. Lady Inoue, why are you countering my order? They deserve nothing more. Not after what they did to Naruto. Argued Madara fiercely, quite shocked over her of all people not understanding his decision. The second Azukage of the island nation looked upon the sea of allied sea. A small part of her heart wanted nothing more than to return the treatment they had given to her boy's body. However, she also knew Naruto would never want such atrocity to be committed in his name. We have avenged my son. The deaths will never be enough or bring back my boy, but these C are also someone's children, parents, siblings, relatives or friends. Whatever their crimes in life are now paid for with the deaths, explained Inoue patiently. But they I know that. Madara flinched upon hearing the fierce reply as the grieving mother looked at him with tears and anger still burning in her eyes. Don't assume your pain is greater than mine. He was my son. My first child. There should be a difference between us and our enemies. Whatever has happened can't be undone, but if Naruto was here he would never give such an order. Don't forget we are shinobi, they are human beings, warned Inoue, as she pointed at the allied sea. Madara and the 7 ninja swordsmen couldn't help but look at Naruto's sea and then at those of their enemies. Even Ino couldn't argue, knowing her mother-in-law was right, even if it was bitter to accept. The beyond rage from Madara's eyes finally subsided as he glanced back at Inoue Namikaze. Do what you want, he relented before walking away to actually join the mourning Spartans beside Naruto's body. Bury all the S with honors. The allies didn't give my son the same dignity, but we shall not take their last dignity away like that. This I order as the second Azukage, commanded Inoue decisively. To her relief, the Uzumaki clansmen sworn to her obeyed with reluctant nods and went forward to carry out the order. Moments later, Mangetsu Hozuki also sighed tiredly before ordering Kirigakure forces to lend assistance in the grim task. Several hundred Zetsu couldn't help but join as well, if only to honor Naruto's memory by obeying his mother's command. Hanzo Uzumaki, the first Azukage, walked forward to stand beside Madara, who looked devastated as he just stared at Naruto's sea, all the wounds the man had suffered, and the mark of the death god himself. We must face the consequences of our actions and mistakes in life and death, even beyond. Isn't that so, Naruto? Asked Hanzo sadly. What? Questioned Madara with a frown. When you live like a warrior your whole life, this is how it ends. I knew him ever since he was a boy, no matter the threat he always stood up for freedom. At first for Azu and its people against Kumogakure, then from the ghosts of his own past, to freeing Kirigakure from its own divisions and violence, to liberating other nations and bringing an end to the rule of daimyos who have used as shinobi as pawns in their endless conflict, and now for humanity's freedom from its own destructive nature. He knew life beyond our island nation was hell, that only horrors and death awaited him, and yet he kept moving forward until his life and soul turned to ashes. There shall never be another like him, said Hanzo respectfully. You're right, Lord Hanzo. I don't think any of us could have done what he did, agreed Mangetsu, earning somber nods from the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen as well. Inoue Namikaze listened to those words said by so many war veterans and found it to be a stark testament to her fallen son's extraordinary life. Life shouldn't be measured in the number of breaths we take, but in the moments that take our breaths away. Then in that manner Naruto lived longer than any of us ever will. He taught us all to how to follow our dreams with confidence and to fight fearlessly for a cause, said Inoue proudly as she knelt beside her son's body to place her hand upon his cold face. Your son was the bravest man I have ever known, Lady Inoue. He was like a son to me as well, I owe him a debt I can never repay. If there is anything your family ever needs, I will be there, promised Madara sincerely. You can, by finishing the story you both started, build a future my son fought and for, even if it goes against some of your own wishes. Can you do that, Madara? Asked Inoue. The Uchiha leader glanced at Naruto for a brief moment before looking back at the boy's mother with absolute resolve. I promise. Finish this, Lord Madara. Afterwards, we shall take elder brother home to say our final goodbye to him, said Nagato sadly, earning firm nods from the 2 Azukages and many other Uzumaki clansmen nearby alongside all the Spartans. Mangetsu saw many Kiri shinobi were about to object fiercely, for Naruto was their cage, and deserved a final resting place among their own fallen back home in the land of water. You left your Mizukage in the end. Naruto's last words to them haunted his heart, and knowing they had failed in standing by their cage's side in his most desperate hour, while his family and the Spartans had. It was a regret he and most shinobi from Kiri would take to the graves. It was why he silenced any protests with the backing of the remaining members of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Leave a reserve force here while I complete the ritual, send the rest to take control of the land of Earth. They have no leaders left and shall serve as the headquarters of the Federation of Shinobi States, instructed Madara. What of the land of fire and sand along with remaining nations? Questioned Hanzo Uzumaki. Subdue them as well, offer them a chance to join the Federation without further, be not that they have any choice left after their armies are said Madara without hesitation. What does this mean for us? Kirigakure and Azushiogakure, demanded Mangetsu, for he didn't fully trust Madara as Naruto had, even if both men had the same goals. Keep your lands and rule yourselves, I have no interest in meddling in your affairs. As an appreciation for your support, I won't mind if you take some reasonable areas from the Land of Fire and other smaller nations nearby without any fights among yourselves. I want your nations to be the founding members of this federation, while the finer points will be discussed in detail in coming weeks, and I intend to let all nations have equal say even in time, even if they opposed us now, but your opinion shall hold more weight, explained Madara truthfully. Many blinked in surprise upon the generous terms for everyone involved, even the defeated nations from the allied forces. But we all report to you, correct? Asked Hanzo Uzumaki shrewdly. As per the rules and regulations, we all shall form together in time. I am not forming a dynasty here. The reason for creation of this federation is to unite and defend our world against the Otsutsuki. I know most don't believe this threat to be real, but it is, and I intend to make preparations in full. That is the one condition which is non-negotiable. Each member state must compulsorily support any measure in this task. Non-cooperation or refusal in this regard will not be allowed, answered Madara, and many felt his power, especially upon the last directive, as the man looked at them challengingly. So post your retirement or death, individuals from member states can be chosen to lead the federation next with your blessing. Yes. Reika Uzumaki gave a loud cough, bringing an end to the political machinations already taking place among the various leaders. It was unavoidable but not the right moment for such talks, as she gestured the shrewd men towards the grieving family and friends of Naruto Namikaze standing in silence near his body. It was Madara who understood what she meant instantly. All of that can come later. First we must give Naruto a proper farewell. 1 week later, Tsunade Senju stood atop one of the beautiful hills of Azushiogakur with a magnificent view of the endless sea on the horizon. However, her gaze was only focused upon the large group of people waiting down in the open fields in unity, respect and grief. There were warriors from Kirigakure, as well as those from Azushiogakur, alongside several thousands from the Land of Lightning. To the astonishment of the victors, several dozen men, including the likes of Tsukumo Hatake, Shisui Uchiha and others of the defeated allied shinobi forces, were also in attendance despite the outcome of the war. With the defeat of the Allied army, which incurred almost absolute losses, the remaining nations across the world surrendered in the next few days to the armies of the Terran Federation. Since the fall of her great uncle Tobirama Senju in battle, Tsunade was chosen to lead the defeated nation with Tsukumo Hatake as her advisor. With the Daimyo's armies crushed, her first act had been of unconditional surrender, an action which Tsukumo had nearly begged for. The fact that Madara Uchiha actually returned Lady Mito, her grandmother, alive was the final straw which sealed her decision. The remaining Jinchuriki except Yagura Karatachi were also allowed to return to their nations. Their tailed beasts, however, remained in Madara's possession until his final plan. Tsunade was actually surprised the Uchiha leader hadn't done so already, but it was also a testament to the actions of the fallen hero who brought all these people here and the legacy he left behind for every human being across this world. The Senju heir had only briefly met her uncle and had found him to be a kind-hearted man, which made her understand and respect the feelings of Uzumaki shinobi standing guard around her now. Even her grandmother Mito had decided to attend this ceremony to express her gratitude for Naruto upholding his promise of keeping Tsunade alive. The fact that her uncle had given such a selfless promise, despite not knowing her closely and being on opposite sides, made Tsunade clench her fists in silent grief when she saw all the people stand at attention and offer a clear path as a handful Spartans and the 7 ninja swordsmen came towards the beach, where a fine cemetery had been created by the second Azuchage for her country's most decorated warrior and her elder son. Inoue Namikaze held back her tears in stony silence when she saw Naruto's casket being carried forward by Spartans led by Nagato on one side and the 7 ninja swordsmen led by Mangetsu on the other. Yahiko couldn't hold back his grief, and tears fell from his eyes when he saw warriors and civilians that had traveled from many parts of the world offer various forms of salute or respect, for everyone felt grateful for the gift bestowed upon them by this shinobi. A world free of war among mankind. A peace which had always been nothing but a distant dream, now finally achieved after thousands of years and the of countless lives. The casket being the embodiment of every life lost to create this history. Every father, mother, son, daughter, husband, wife, sister, brother, cousin, friend, and comrade. Hanzo Uzumaki and Captain Reika Uzumaki were not surprised when they saw the casket was draped in the flag of not just Azushiogakur, but also Kirigakure and the Terran Federation. For the person it belonged to had been the finest shinobi of Azushiogakur, the unbeatable Cage of Kirigakur and the heroic marshal of the Terran Federation. Each of these enis had honored his S by bestowing upon him the highest honors of their nations, with the most important being given by the leader of the Terran Federation Madara Uchiha. Hero of humanity. Kushina watched the casket being carried right before her eyes and couldn't stop her tears even as she offered a heartfelt salute. Every unbearable second making her remember the fateful moment where the man she loved his life to save theirs. She had been heartbroken when he ended their relationship and returned back to Kirigakur, only now to realize that he had never stopped loving her. And when the moment came, he fought against the entire world and upheld their sacred childhood promise which she couldn't uphold. Till the end, Ghost. Hayate and Kasumi stepped forward to lay a comforting hand each on Kushina's shoulders even as they saluted their fallen friend and leader. Looking around at all the remaining Spartans alive and somber, they could understand just why Naruto had done the impossible. You brought us all home this time, brother, whispered Hayate sadly. We will never forget this, Captain, acknowledged Kasumi tearfully. Mai Terumi had been standing not far away with her precious children in her arms once again. Mito Uzumaki and Minae's Terumi stood near her alongside a large contingent of Kirigakur fighters headed by General Abe and their nation's Anbu commander. Even after everything that happened, she could only feel unbearable pain and despair as that dreaded casket was carried before her eyes. She trembled when she saw her infant daughter reach for her father's casket alongside their son, making many in the crowd look away in sadness. Almost all of the Kirigakur shinobi looked ashamed and were still unable to forgive themselves for the guilt of not being able to save their cage in time. Now she understood just why everything had happened this way and could respect the lengths which her husband had gone to keep her and their entire family safe. But it could never replace the lasting hole left in her and most importantly her children's lives. Looking back at her husband's family and friends alongside her own and fellow countrymen. Humanity was victorious and so are you, Naruto. You defeated us all, she whispered somberly, even as she offered her solemn respect. Mai looked to her right to find her husband's first wife Ino Namikaze alive once again and standing in silence with tears in her eyes. Watching the casket being carried only made Ino remember the time she spent with Naruto, that playful smile, and the gentle gaze that always had unending love for her. All of which she would never see again. The broken Kunoichi was surprised when she felt a gentle hand touch her shoulder and saw Naruto's mother looking at her with compassion in her eyes. No words were spoken, yet Ino saw the older woman understanding all her feelings when she embraced her. They were soon also supported by Kushina, Yahiko and even Mai Terumi, all of whom seemed to understand and share Ino's feelings better than anyone. Even as their family and friends grieved, Nagato led a group of Spartans in a solemn and unstoppable honor procession towards what would be his dear brother's final resting place. Please look after them, Nagato. Nagato clenched his fist hard as he remembered his failure on that fateful day. He could still remember his brother's heroic and painful last stand vividly alongside his final conversation with his sibling. It was always you and me against the world, elder brother. How am I supposed to go on without you now? Nagato now clearly understood just how terrible his sibling must have felt when he lost him and all the Spartans except Kushina in their first war. It was that pain and the desire to bring them all back home safe this time which also decided his final act alongside the wish to bring peace to mankind. As Nagato wallowed in his regrets, Mangetsu alongside the remaining 7 ninja swordsmen felt their hearts become even heavier as the final grave got closer and the moment to bid their friend and cage farewell become imminent. The magnificent and large tombstone in front of them making every one of them understand the gravity of their loss. Naruto Namikaze the Great, aged 27 years, Spartan captain, general of Kirigakur, the 4th Mizukage, marshal of the Terran Federation, the young wolf, hero of humanity. Mangetsu, Haku, Zabuza, Amayuri, Kisame and even Jinpachi took a moment to understand the sheer legacy of the man who changed their lives forever etched upon the tombstone. But there was another lure upon that tombstone that brought tears to all their eyes. The 7th Swordsmen. The weight of the casket upon their shoulders became unbearable as they fought against the waves of past happy memories with him in each of their hearts. Thankfully, their pain would be lessened if only a little as they finally placed the casket upon an elevated platform and took a step back as a squad of Azu Spartans, alongside Anbu Black Ops members from Kirigakur and a squad of Zetsus came forward. Nagato and every member of the honor guard, including the 7 ninja swordsmen, stood at attention and offered their salutes as the Spartan squad wrapped their island's flag respectfully before handing it over to Hanzo Uzumaki, their first Azuki. The Kirigakure Anbus did the same act for their own nation's flag before handing it over to General Abe, who accepted the same with a heavy heart. The Zetsus repeated the same honor for the Terran Federation's flag before giving it to a solemn Madara Uchiha himself standing nearby. Hanzo Uzumaki, General Abe and Madara Uchiha couldn't help but feel the harsh reality of war when they looked at the grave of the young warrior and the flags he fought and for. Steeling themselves regardless, the 3 older men walked towards the grieving family of the fallen. The first Azuki, Hanzo Uzumaki, felt great sadness within his heart when he handed over Azu's flag to his successor, and the second Azuki, Inoue Namikaze, and her husband, Yahiko Uzumaki. The grieving parents nodded respectfully even as Inoue finally allowed her tears to break free. General Abe handed over the Kirigakure flag to Mai Terumi with full respect, a gesture she accepted with a brief nod even as she looked at her restless children being held by the grandfather Minaze Terumi and looking at her innocently. Ino's lips trembled and her legs shook as she watched Madara Uchiha stand before her. Her hands weakly grasped the Terran Federation flag handed over by its ruler himself in person. A flag which held a phoenix protecting a planet with its wings. She gently caressed it and felt a bare solace within her heart upon seeing the dream her lover had himself for. She looked up when she heard all the Spartans dressed in their ceremonial uniform walk towards their leader's casket in a well-organized line led by Nagato. The said Uzumaki removed the Spartan wings of freedom from his sea before placing it upon the casket. With a trembling breath he punched it firmly into its body. We will meet again someday and I will look after everyone, elder brother. Kushina walked forward next and laid her own Spartan wings upon the casket. I will always love you, Minato. With a final salute, she punched her wings into the casket, making Hayate arrive by her side next to complete their last act for the beloved friend and captain. Inoue and Yahiko felt their hearts skip a beat every time a Spartan punched their ceremonial wings into their son's casket. They didn't want those echoes to ever end, as it was the final salute offered by these warriors along with a solemn promise of never forgetting their leader and joining by his side once again someday. Mai set aside her misgivings and approached Ino, who was trembling the entire time as the Spartans said their farewells. The 2 women looked at each other and understood the shared grief. It was why Ino didn't resist when Mai grasped her hand comfortingly and lent her strength while gaining some for herself against the haunting sounds of Spartans embedding their wings into the casket. When the deed was finally completed, Madara had expected the ceremony to be brought to an end but was astonished when he watched the 7 ninja swordsmen step forward as well. He saw Mangetsu looking at his comrades, who all nodded at him in unison and without hesitation of any kind. The Hozuki clan head was the first to step beside the grave and raise his infamous sword Kabutawari, helmet splitter, before it firmly in the ground. Haku stepped forward next and embedded her prized sword Nuibari, sewing needle, into the ground with tears still falling from her eyes. Amayuri shared that grief as she devoted her twin swords Kiba, fangs, and whispered a silent farewell. Zabuza came next and looked at the casket for a very long moment, expecting the one it belonged to step out of it any moment and start an argument with him. Regret weighed heavy in his heart for how things ended between them, even though Naruto never held it against him. With a final salute, he devoted Kubikiri Bocho, E-Blade, as his tribute to the fallen hero. Jinpachi offered a solemn nod before devoting his sword Shibuki, Splash, to a prized comrade and leader. Kisame was the last one to step forward and looked at his blade Samehada, shark skin, for a long moment. The man this casket belonged to had given up everything to ensure the Kiri swordsman wasn't required to use this weapon against fellow humans ever again. It was fitting to devote it to him, and so he did with a faint smile. Not a single person present was left unshaken by the noble act, irrespective of which nations they belonged to. Yet for the first time Ino, Mai, Kushina, Nagato, Yahiko and Inoue and many of the friends and family of Naruto Namikaze had a glimmer of a smile upon their lips when the 7 ninja swordsmen grasped their former comrade and Kage's prized sword Muramasa in unison before embedding it at the foot of the casket, thereby completing the V-shaped symbol around the sacred grave. Victorious in life and death. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.